So this is the review sheet for the first summative. I'm going to go over the whole thing, so whatever part you need to see or want to look at, just fast forward to that. Otherwise, here is the entire review. Okay, so for the first one, all we're doing is adding up like terms. You're going to find the terms that are alike, and it's based on the exponents. So right here, -5 triangle to the third, and +1 triangle to the third gives you -4. So -5 plus 1 is -4. Triangle to the third. Then we find the squareds. Here's a squared here. Here's a squared here. We're just combining these things because there's a plus sign in the middle. So 10 plus 7 is 17. Triangle squared. And then we have -8 and -2 gives you -10. And that is all you have to do. There is no distributive property you have to really worry about because distributing a +1 to everything doesn't change anything. All right, and number 2, we do have to distribute because that negative sign in the middle of these two parentheses is going to change all of these terms to be the opposite sign. So now it's going to be -9 triangle to the fourth minus triangle plus 2. But now that that is done, we can just combine the like terms. So we have 3 triangle to the fourth minus 9 triangle to the fourth gives you -6 triangle to the fourth. There is only one triangle that's raised to the third power, so we're going to just rewrite that just the way it is. There is no squareds. There is a +1 triangle, or sorry, now it's a -1 triangle. So it's negative triangle, and then -8 plus 2 is -6. And that is all you have to do. You're just combining by adding up like terms. But before they had to do that, make sure you multiply that second set of parentheses by that negative sign. Number 3. All right, you're just distributing the first term with the other two terms in the second set of parentheses, and then the second term with the same thing. So 3 triangle times 2 triangle is 6 triangle squared. 3 triangle times 5 is going to be 15 triangle. -7 times 2 triangle is -14 triangle. And -7 times 5 is going to be -35. We combine the two things in the middle that are the same. So we're going to get just positive triangle minus 35. And that is all you have to do. Distribute and combine like terms. Number 4. Now here, you're not just squaring the two terms in the middle. You are multiplying the parentheses by what it was. Okay, now it's kind of like the same problem we just did in number 3. You're going to distribute the terms with each other. So you get 16 triangle squared minus 12 triangle, and then another -12 triangle, and then a +9. Combining the two terms in the middle, you get 16 triangle squared minus 24 triangle plus 9. Number 5. This is like number 1. You're just combining the like terms because now there's a plus sign in between them, so you're not distributing anything. So you have -5 triangle squared minus 4 triangle squared is -9 triangle squared. And then combining the two terms that are the other ones, so you got 3 and 2 gives you +5. And that is all you have to do. Lastly, number 6 is a lot like number 2. You're going to distribute that negative sign to the two terms in the parentheses. So you get -6 triangle squared and +5 triangle. And now you're just going to combine those terms with the other terms in the first set of parentheses. So 4 triangle squared minus 6 triangle squared is -2 triangle squared. -3 plus 5 is +2 triangle, and then +7. There you go. That is the first 6. Moving on. So we have an expression here that we want to figure out what is happening to it or what can you do to it. Okay. So it looks like we're doing if you just look at the answers from A through D, all right, we can only be factored by GCF of 3 triangle, only be factored by GCF of 6, cannot be factor, or none of the things apply. So Let's go to the first one. So you got triangle squared minus 11 triangle plus 2. Well, if you're thinking about how these things work, this number 2, let's make this big. This number 2, two numbers had to be multiplied, and then those two numbers that got multiplied, so the factors of 2 are 2 times 1. Those give you 2, and those two numbers added together are supposed to give you 11. Well, that's not going to happen. So this cannot be factored. So that would be C. All right, the next one. You can take a 6 out of this. But you can also take a triangle out of this. So this would probably be D, because although B is 6, you can take a 6 out of number 10, and that's it. So this would have to be B, so that means this one's going to be A. That does make sense, because 6, 9, and 18 you can take a 3 out of. That's the most you can take out. You can also take a triangle out of each one of those terms. Okay? So that's just about kind of like recognizing what you're given and what you can do with it. All right? All right, on to number 11 through, 16. These are the factoring ones. These are just expressions. So again, you kind of want to go through this list in your head. All right, first is, can you take out the greatest common factor? Yes or no? If yes, do it, then move on to the next step. If no, what else comes after that? Next is, after that, is phi steps to factoring. Well, this looks like a phi steps to factoring problem because there's no term in front of the triangle squared. So there's no number here, which means we can try phi steps to factoring first. So it works like this. We got a triangle. Drop the first sign as a plus. What times a positive gives you a positive? That would be a positive. The factors of 5 are 5 times 1, and that is it. So then the biggest number goes first, and that does equal 6. So 5 plus 1 is 6, and 5 times 1 is 5. So that works out. Okay. Here, number 12. Now you could rewrite this if you wanted to be triangle squared, either plus or minus. We're going to do plus just for the sake of argument. 0 pi minus 64. Okay. If you don't recognize this, this is a difference of two squares. Okay, so we could do a phi steps to factoring with this problem. So we have triangle and triangle. It's an ugly triangle. Let's try that again. It looks like a mountain. Okay. So if we're looking at the one up here where it's a triangle squared plus 0 triangle minus 64, first sign is positive. What times a positive gives you a negative for a 64 would be a negative. And the factors of 64, well, I can tell you right now, they have to equal 0 when they're done, and that would give you 8 times 8. So 8 times 8 is 64, and 8 minus 8 is 0. So this one is done. Okay, if you wanted to go through the other factors before you found 8 and 8, that's fine. It's whatever. All right, 13. Again, you go through your head. What can you do with this? Well, every term here is an even number, which means they're all divisible by at least 2. Okay, and then you have 4 triangles, 3 triangles, and 2 triangles. So we're going to take out a 2 and 2 triangles. Okay, we're left with then triangle squared plus 4 triangle minus 21. Okay, so we're dividing all the terms that we started with by 2 triangle squared. That gives us what we have left in the parentheses. Okay, triangle to the 4th divided by triangle squared, there's 2 triangles left. All right, same goes for the other things. You got 3, take out 2, you got left with 1. And you have 2 triangles, you take out 2, you're left with no triangles. Okay, and all the numbers are divided by 2. So now what we have left in the parentheses, we can try phi steps to factoring, because again, there's no term in front of the triangle squared that's in the parentheses. We're going to rewrite the triangle squared, the 2 triangle squared on the outside, because it's still part of the problem. And then start doing phi steps to factoring. So we got triangle and triangle. Drop the first sign as a plus. What times a positive gives you a negative? That would be a negative. Factors of 21 are 1 and 21, and then 3 times 7. If the 2 signs in the parentheses are different, okay, that means you're going to subtract the factors. 1 and 21 will not get you 4, but 7 and 3 would, and the biggest number goes first. And that's, you have that one factored. Okay. Next. This should actually be a triangle here. Sorry, it was an X. All right. So again, you go through that list. GCF first. Well, you got 7 and 28. Those are both factors of 7. And you have a triangle to the third and the one triangle. So we're going to take it a 7 triangle. And we are left with triangle squared minus 4. Okay, well, these are both perfect squares. It ends up being like a lot like problem number 12 where we have a difference of 2 squares. So we're going to rewrite 7 triangle. Okay, and since you know or should know that it's a difference of 2 squares, you know you're going to have triangle here, triangle here. This would be positive, this would be negative, and the two factors that make up 4 but added to be 0 would be 2 and 2. And 14 is done. All right, in 15, you go through your steps. Greatest common factor? No. You got 2, 7, and 3. None of those have a common factor. You got triangle squared and triangle, but no triangle in next to the 3, so you can't take anything out of this. So then you go to 5 steps for factoring. Well, 5 steps won't work because there is a 2 in front of the x squared, and that doesn't work with 5 steps. So now we can go try advanced factoring or the bottoms up method. Whichever one you pick, it's up to you entirely. If you want to just do guess and check, that's fine too. All right, I will do factor by grouping. So 2 times 3 is 6. The factors of 6 that get up to be 7 would be 6 times 1. All right. So I'm going to rewrite these as 2 triangle squared plus 6 triangle plus 1 triangle plus 3. Then I'm going to group the first 2 and the last 2. I'm going to take out a 2 and a triangle out of the first set of parentheses. So I'll be left with triangle plus 3. All right, and then 1 triangle plus 3, there's not really anything to take out, but you can always take out something, which is what you can take out a 1. Left with triangle plus 3. So then take the stuff that's on the outside, the 2 triangle plus 1. That's your first factor, and triangle plus 3 is your other. All right. And lastly here, we've got to go through those steps again. You got greatest common factor, of which there is none. 5 steps to factoring won't work because there's a 3 here. So we're going to do the advanced factoring. I'm going to try that out. So we got 3 times 8 is going to be 24. All right, 2 factors that multiply to give you 24 but add up to give you positive 10. Let's see, 6 times 4. Oh, there we go, 6 times 4. All right, so just for variety, we'll do the bottoms up method with this. So we have 6 and 4. I'm going to put 3 and 3 here because that's our first number there. Okay, we're going to reduce the fractions. So you're going to get 2 over 1 and then 4 over 3. Put the x's in the denominators and move them up. So you get x plus 2 and 3x plus 4. And that is the bottoms up method. Okay, so there we've factored a bunch of different stuff. We're going to see more factoring and things like that in the next section, it looks like, because there we're going to be solving quadratics, and we might need to use factoring for that. All right, so you are given the quadratic formula here on the review sheet. You will be also given that on the test, so you don't have to memorize it. Okay, so in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to solve these. So in the previous section, it was just expressions. There was no equal sign, so there's nothing to solve. Now we have an equals, and now we have to solve it. Okay, so if you have something that's already been factored, so this is a quadratic, it's just already been factored for you, so you just have to take your 2 factors and set them both equal to 0. Okay, and now you're going to solve for the triangle. So the first one, I'm going to add 2 and then divide by 5, so triangle will equal 2 over 5. And the second one, I'm going to subtract by 3, so triangle will equal negative 3. These are my 2 answers. We've just solved the factors of that quadratic. Okay. All right, let's go to 18. Now, when you're doing these quadratic equations and they're set up like 18 is, before you start doing something, you have to get everything to one side and set it equal to 0. So in this case, we're going to add 8 to the other side. So if we add 8 and set it equal to 0, now we can start doing whatever we need to do. So again, you go through your list. Can you find the greatest common factor? There is none. Can I do 5 steps of factoring? It looks like I might be able to because there is no term in front of the x squared. So let's try it out. Okay, so drop the first sign, which is negative. What times a negative gives you a positive? That would also be a negative. The factors of 8 would be 8 times 1 and 2 times 4. Well, 8 and 1, since the two signs are the same, you're going to add, and 8 and 1 will give you 9, with the 8, the bigger number, going first. Okay, so now in the previous section, we'd be done, but now we have an equation. So we're going to take the triangle minus 8 and set it equal to 0, and the triangle minus 1 and set it equal to 0, and solve both for the triangles, which will give you positive 8 and positive 1. And there you go. All right. Number 19, this is like we showed you in the Zoom session. This is a solving using square roots. Now this is a little bit different. Okay, you could technically take the triangle minus 5 that's being squared and square it out like we did in the upper section of the review sheet. I wouldn't recommend that. That's a lot more work than it has to be. Okay, in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to get the part that's being squared by itself. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. So we have triangle minus 5 squared is equal to 1 now because we added 1 to the other side. Now we're going to do the opposite of what squaring is, which is a square root. The squared and the square root will cancel, and we'll be left with just triangle minus 5 equals. Now the square root of 1 is just 1, but the important thing to remember for this type of problem is when you do square root both sides of an equation, you have to put a plus or minus. There are two types or two answers that are possible when you square something to get something else. So if you have 1 squared, it could be 1, but if you have negative 1 squared, that's also positive 1. That's why there's 2 answers. Okay, now if we want to solve for the triangle, we're going to add 5. So we're going to have triangle equals 5 plus or minus 1. Now you can't leave it like this because you can keep reducing it. If your 1 had been like a square root of, like, let's say 7, okay, instead of 1, you could just stop right where we've got it. But since it is a 1 and it is a whole number, we can combine it with the 5. So if we do 5 plus 1, we get 6. If we do 5 minus 1, we get 4. And those are your 2 answers for this particular problem. All right, and then just solving using square roots. All right, number 20. Again, kind of like question number 18 above it. We want to get everything to one side first. Now, it seems obvious to move the 4 over, but in fact, that's not what I would do because I don't like my a values that are being next to the triangle squares to be negative. So I want to get that over to the left. So I want to add 3 triangle squared and subtract 8 triangle. So I'll get 3 triangle squared. I'll get minus 8 triangle, and that will equal, plus 4, and that will equal 0. Okay, now we go through our little checklist. First is, can you take out a greatest common factor? 3 and 4 don't share a common factor, so that's no good because there's not enough triangles to take out for that either. So we go to 5 steps. 5 steps won't work because that 3 is in front of the triangle squared term. And then we go to advanced factoring. So advanced factoring, we got 3 times 4 is going to give you 12. We want to find out, is there any terms that can give you, when they multiply, give you 12? Will also be negative 8. And in fact, there's negative 6 and negative 2. Negative 6 times negative 2 gives you positive 12. And negative 6 minus 2 gives you negative 8, so that would work. Let's see, which one do I want to do? Do I want to do grouping or bottoms up? I think we'll do grouping. Okay, so we got 3 triangle squared, minus 6 triangle, minus 2 triangle, plus 4. We group them together. We take out a 3 triangle out of the first one. We're left with triangle minus 2. We take out a negative 2 out of the second one. We're left with triangle minus 2 again. Again, noticing that the parts in the parentheses look exactly the same now. So we take the parts that are inside, or on the outside rather. Minus 2 is one factor, and triangle minus 2 is the other factor. Okay, but we're not done because this is an equation. So we have, I'm going to put it over here, 3 triangle minus 2 equals 0, and triangle minus 2 equals 0. So triangle will equal, it looks like an A. Sorry. So triangle will equal, you're going to add 2 and divide by 3, so 2/3. And then just add 2. So there's your 2 answers for 20. If we come up with another advanced factoring, I'll do bottoms up just so you can see the difference. Okay, here we go, 21. All right, again, go through your steps. Can you take out its greatest common factor? No. 5 steps to factoring, you could, but here's the kicker. Okay, I know for a fact that if I start doing 5 steps to factoring, I'm not going to find a factor of 1, which would be 1 times 1. That's going to add up to give me 8. So I know this can't be factored. So if it can't be factored, you throw it in the quadratic formula. Okay, again, the quadratic formula is listed right over here. There it is, all nice and beautiful. I know what it is, so I'm not going to have to go back to the formula. If you don't have to use the formula because you just know it, that's awesome. If you need to go back to the formula, go ahead. So it starts with negative b. If b is already negative, we're going to change that sign to be positive. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now you're going to make sure that that negative 8 goes inside parentheses before you square it. Otherwise, you will get the wrong answer when you put it in your calculator. All right, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times b, which is negative, or sorry, times c, which is negative 1, all divided by 2a, which is a is 1. So this is what the setup of the quadratic formula should look like for question number 21. Okay, so we start figuring this out. Use your calculators. You got 64 when you square the negative 8, minus 4 times 1 times negative 1 gives you 68. So we have 8 plus or minus the square root of 68 over 2. Okay, now technically I think you can divide that, or you can reduce the square root of 68, but we're not really doing that right now. So this would be your answer. So x will equal this. You can stop there. That's as far as we need you to go. Okay? So all I had to do is simplify what was inside the square root. Okay, if it had been a perfect square, then you would have realized, then you hopefully would have realized, that that quadratic would in fact have been factorable. But it's not, so we didn't. All right, so this is like a difference of difference of 2 squares. We've done these problems. We've seen 2 other problems just like this before in this sheet. Oops, hold on. Press something. Okay, here we go. So there is no greatest common factor, but I know it does do 5 steps to factoring in a sense. You're going to have triangle plus 10, triangle minus 10. You're going to take each set of parentheses, set them both equal to 0, and triangle will equal positive 10 and negative 10. That was a pretty simple one. Well, it should have been. All right, number 23. All right, this is again like the solving using square roots. All right, so we have to get the parentheses that's being squared by itself, so we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So we have triangle plus 2 squared. All right, 14 minus 5 is going to give you 9. All right, then we do the opposite of squares, which is square roots. So those 2 will go away. We'll get triangle plus 2 is equal to, the square root of 9 is 3, but you got to put plus or minus. Then we subtract the 2. And since we can combine these, we have to. So negative 2 plus 3 is going to be positive 1. Negative 2 minus 3 is going to be negative 5. And those are your 2 answers. All right, moving on to 24. All right, again, we have to get it so that it equals 0 in this particular case. So we're going to get triangle squared plus 3 triangle equals, minus 10 equals 0. I almost skipped it. Okay. So Can we take a greatest common factor out? No. Can we do 5 steps to factoring? I think we can. So let's do that. So we have triangle and triangle. Drop the first sign. What times a positive gives you a negative? And that would be a negative. The factors of 10 are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Since the signs are different, we're going to subtract. Well, 1 and 10 gives you 9, but 5 and 2 gives you 3. So we're going to put the biggest number first. All right, and now we're going to take each one of our factors and set it equal to 0. So triangle will equal negative 5 and positive 2. All right, doing good so far. I think we're almost done. Yes, we are. Awesome, we got one more page. Okay, now we haven't gone over these, but these are something that you should have known from past stuff. And this isn't really that difficult. It's mainly just a, put it together and put it in the calculator problem. So we're given 2 separate functions. We're given this one, g of triangle, and there's the expression for it, and an h of triangle. All right, and there's the expression for that one. And what we're going to do is we're going to put those values for the problems into the expression. So the first one says g of negative 8. This does not mean we're multiplying negative 8 times all that stuff. It means we're putting negative 8 for any time we see a triangle in the expression. So if we rewrite the expression, negative 5 plus, I'm going to rewrite, instead of the triangle, I'm going to put in negative 8 in its place, squared. Okay, and notice I just replaced the triangle with a negative 8, and I just put it in parentheses. Everything else is the same. I've changed nothing else. Okay, I'm not multiplying. I'm putting that negative 8 into this spot. Okay. Let's erase that. Okay, now we combine our like terms. We've got 5 minus 8 is going to be negative 3. So we have negative and then negative 3, and then squaring that. If you have negative 3 squared, you don't multiply first, so it's not negative times negative 3. It's negative 3 squared first. Negative 3 squared is going to be positive 9. There's going to be a negative out in front of it. So the answer is going to be negative 9. All you're doing is simplifying the expression. For 26, you have h of 3. So you're going to put the 3 in for both triangles. So you have 2 times 3 squared minus 4 times 3. Again, notice I'm replacing the triangles with a 3 in parentheses. Now we do the order of operations. 3 squared goes before 2 times 3, so 3 squared is 9. Times 2 minus 4 times 3 is going to give you 12. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 minus 12 is going to give you 6. Okay, let's erase these things for prettiness sake. Okay. Next, we're going to put negative 4 in for the triangles for the h function. So we again have 2. We're going to put negative 4 in parentheses, square it, minus 4 times negative 4 again. So notice, everything is the same except I've replaced the triangles with a negative 4 that's in parentheses. Okay, so here negative 4 squared is going to be positive 16. 16 times 2, which you write first here, and then negative 4 times negative 4 is going to give you positive 16 again. So 2 times 16 is 32, and 32 plus 16 is going to give you 48. Okay. And finally, g of 0. So we have negative 5. If you're putting this into the function, we got negative and then 5 plus 0 squared. Is that right? Yeah, looks good. So 5 plus 0 is 5. 5 squared is 25, and then it's negative 25. Okay, and that's all you got to do for these problems. They are on the test. I know we haven't gone over them explicitly, but these are things that you should have done in Math 1 and Math 2 and be somewhat familiar with. If you're not, well, there's 4 problems to get familiar with it. All right. For this, it's really important that you do the notes from Thursday, or watch the video that's included in that day. pretty sure I've put it online already. If I haven't yet, then it's going to be in last week's stuff from Thursday. So if you go to the top of the weekly agenda, on the top it says past week's agendas. You can just click on that and find the last week, and then go to Thursday and click on the notes. Okay, so what you're going to do for this is you're going to put both of those equations into your calculators. Okay, if you don't think you have a calculator, you can always go to the Calculate 84 app on your iPad. If you don't have it on your iPad, go to the self-service app and download it. That was also included in your directions from last Thursday. So we can follow along. We got negative 5x plus 2. You put that in your calculator under the y equals button. And then you do the same thing for the other equation, 2x plus 16. Okay. If we graph it, we can kind of sketch a graph real quick of what these look like. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It looks like one is going to be like this, and the other one's going to be up like this. So they're going to meet up here someplace. So we want to find out what that point of intersection is. We can do that by hitting the second and then the trace button. It gives you a menu. You're going to hit 5 for intersect. Okay. And we're going to find out that the intersection point is at negative 2 and 12. Yeah, this is a point, so make sure you write it as a point. Again, the directions for this are on last Thursday's notes. It has step-by-step directions of what to do in your calculator. Okay, and the calculator it's referring to is the Calculate 84 app. If you have a TI-84, the wording is a little bit differently when you're pressing the buttons. All right, but if you do the Calculate 84 on your iPad, that's what it's for. Those directions are for that app. Okay, if we do number 30, let's get rid of those equations from the first one. We get 2x plus 6. We've got 3x plus 1. We can graph those two things. The first graph looks like it goes like this, and I'm just sketching it. I'm not being very particular about it. The other graph goes like this. Looks like they're going to, let's redo those because the first graph goes like this. The other graph's going to go like this and meet up someplace over here. Okay. Again, we find the intersection. Get 5. So it's going to be 5 comma 16. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the y-intercepts for these. So again, you go to your y equals, you clear out all the equations you used to have, you type in it just what it says, 2 minus parentheses x plus 4 squared plus 5x squared plus 8. Okay, we can graph that. See what it looks like. Looks something like this. Again, it's just a sketch. If it's not perfect, that's fine, but it should be somewhat representative of what it says or looks like on your screen. Okay, we want to find the y-intercept. So again, the best way to do this is to go to the table function. So you said second and graph. It tells you a table. You want to find out where the x term is 0 on your table, and that gives you what the y value is on the y-intercept. So our y-intercept is a point at 0, comma, negative 6. Okay, and then the last one, go to the y equals button, clear out that equation that you just used, type in the new one, 3x minus parentheses x minus 1, parentheses squared, plus 8x squared, plus 5. I'm going to graph this, see what this looks like. It's going to look a little bit like this. All right. Again, we're going to go to the second and then table function. So if you hit second and then the graph button, it gives you a table. You find out where x is 0, and you're looking for the y value of that, which is 4. So those are what your entire review for the first unit should look like. If you have questions, it's important that you come to Tuesday's class and ask them before the test on Wednesday. And that's it.